Once upon a time, aboard a long-haul flight in the middle of the night, a group of passengers unknowingly shared their journey with a terrifying creature, a vampire. Among the travelers was Professor Jonathan Scott, an expert vampire hunter. The flight started as usual, with the passengers settling into their seats. But little did they know, a vampire disguised as a regular passenger lurked among them. As the plane soared through the skies, darkness enveloped the cabin, except for the dim overhead lights. Suddenly, the vampire revealed its true form, causing panic and chaos to erupt. People screamed and tried to escape the clutches of the fearsome predator. Thankfully, Professor Scott was there and ready to spring into action. He had dedicated his life to studying and fighting creatures like this vampire. Equipped with his knowledge and weapons, he formulated a plan to immobilize the vampire and protect the passengers. With holy water, garlic, and a wooden stake, the professor engaged in a fierce battle with the vampire. The passengers watched in both awe and fear as the two clashed, their weapons colliding amidst the cramped airplane cabin. The vampire employed cunning tricks to confuse Professor Scott. It used its supernatural abilities to disappear into the shadows, making it challenging to track. Laughter filled the cabin as the vampire taunted the professor, knowing that fear could weaken even the most skilled hunter. But the professor was undeterred. He anticipated the vampire's moves and came prepared. Activating a set of UV light emitting devices, he flooded the cabin with ultraviolet rays. The vampire shrieked in pain as the light burned its skin, forcing it to retreat momentarily. Not giving up, the vampire resorted to a hypnotic gaze, trying to control the professor's mind. It dug into his deepest fears, aiming to break his determination. However, Professor Scott had trained his mind to resist such manipulation. He focused on his mission, refusing to fall under the vampire's spell. To counter the hypnotic gaze, the professor unleashed a vial of herbs known for breaking mind control. The smoke released from the vial disrupted the vampire's hold, freeing the professor from its influence. With each trick the vampire tried, Professor Jonathan Scott had a counter. He exploited the vampire's weaknesses, using sunlight, holy water, and garlic to his advantage. His arsenal of stakes and silver-edged blades became his allies in the battle. The vampire grew increasingly desperate, launching furious attacks in an attempt to overpower the professor. But the professor's agility and combat skills allowed him to dodge the vampire's strikes, biding his time for the perfect opportunity. Finally, seizing that moment, Professor Scott lunged forward and drove a stake through the vampire's heart. The creature let out a final howl of agony before turning to dust, vanishing forever. The remaining passengers were filled with gratitude and admiration for Professor Scott. They had witnessed the epic struggle between good and evil, and the professor emerged as their hero. As the flight continued, the passengers found solace in knowing that there were brave individuals like Professor Jonathan Scott, ready to confront the darkness that hides in the shadows. The story of the vampire on the flight would be passed down through generations, a symbol of the human spirit's triumph over darkness.